everybody, and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today we're going to build a Yak-40 on the scale 1/44 from Zvezda. So it's been just released recently, so I could not resist. I had to have it made quickly and try to give you a review as quickly as possible. So let's open the box and see what we have inside. So, initially you have, we're going to come with a A4 format and two side colors for the livery. So you have an old Soviet Aeroflot livery, which is the first options, and the second from Rossya. So it's the second livery that you can do. There is also a lot of aftermarket decals available. Then we're going to move on to the instruction sheet. As you know, those Zvezda skis are pretty basic, but the kit are from excellent quality. So you have the options apparently to do all the fuselage and all the cockpit, which is going to be very interesting. You'll have to add some weight, 5 grams, and passenger windows are filled like we don't have on every other models. And all the details for the undercarriage, fuselage and wings. Seems to be a really nice kit. So let's move on to now to the decals. The decals are pretty straightforward actually. They're in pretty good quality. I have to say that on the recent kit they are getting better and better. Now we'll move to the clear part, and basically you have, here you have the windscreen, cockpit window and passenger window. So pretty straightforward, not much to say about. Like every Zvezda kit, you'll have a stand if you want to do the plane airborne. Now let's put the kit itself. That's the main topic for that review. And we have basically two screws. It's a standard, I would say, of Zvezda. Fine engravement, light grey color, lots of little details. Honestly, it's a very nice, beautiful little kit, and so you really have lots of details. So it's gonna be, all the panel lines are here. I think I'm really gonna enjoy to make that little models. Then you have basically the wings, the horizontal stabilizer, cockpits, engines, and all the little details on the back. So that's gonna be a real nice kit. That's gonna give me a lot of joy to build that. So enough of talking, and let's start building. So we're gonna start our build by preparing the fuselage and also all the little parts together. So let's prepare everything, put them down on the bench, and then we're gonna prepare all the parts. As you can see, there is a little bit of work, and you have to be a little bit careful because the plastic on those Zvezda model is still a bit fragile, so don't rush too much. So when the parts are prepared, then we're gonna move on to the cockpit, and the cockpit is quite easy, it's in two parts, then you have to add a little bit extra. Then we're gonna move on to the number 2 intake exhaust, not the intake, basically number 2 intake, and then we're gonna glue our wings together. There'll be a little bit of work toward some actuator that we have to put initially. There are 2 actuators that needs to be fixed before we close basically the undercarriage, and then we'll be able to close our wings. Then we're gonna move. I decided to paint that aircraft basically to do it with the open cockpit windows. So this time I'll put some mask, and you'll see later on how it works. So initially we have to paint the cockpit. So I'll use a blue-green color that you have on all ex-Soviet aircraft. And then we're gonna put the windscreen and we're gonna try to replicate a little bit the instrument panel, and from then we are going to add our seats. While before doing that, we're gonna move on to the intake of the number 2 engine, and we're gonna do it in metallic colors. Then I'm gonna use dark black matte color to replicate basically the instruments on the instrument panel. Then I will fix our pilot seats, and then we'll be able to put the yoke, and then we'll be able to paint them. We'll now move on to the build of the fuselage. So we're gonna glue basically the intake of the number 2 engine. There'll be the exhaust pipe as well, and then we'll have to move on to basically the cockpit, and the nose wheel well is just below the aircraft. As I didn't have any mask for the passenger window, I didn't glue them directly to the aircraft. I left the hole empty, and then I will basically fill them with some clear metal, basically clear varnish, but you'll see that a little bit later. So what we're doing now, we're adding some modeling paste to add some ballast to the front of the aircraft, and that will allow the aircraft not to sit on its tail. I saw on other video that some people put basically a big screw which is quite heavy, and they put it with some glue and they fix it there. That's also another way to do it, but that's what I've been doing for many years, and I still do it this way, and it's worked very well. So after that, of course, we're gonna close our fuselage, and I will use some clamp to make sure that we don't have too many gaps. Then of course it's time to move on to back to our wings. We'll remove all the gaps, filling them up with some Tamiya putty, and then we're gonna move on to the fuselage, of course, and we're gonna do the engines and all the little parts as well required some gap filling. Now that the Tamiya putty has been dried out, we're gonna remove the extra, and for this I will use a 600 sandpaper grid over water. That's avoid to have too much dust around, especially when you're doing with an open cockpit like I was doing on that model. You don't want to have too much dust going into the aircraft itself. So of course after that I'll move on the wings and finish up all the cleaning and the sanding part. After this, we're gonna move on to the other part, and we're gonna start gluing basically the wings to the fuselage. And I have to say that the fitting was quite impressive. I didn't have to use not much putty, or a lot of gap filling was not much required. Then we're gonna move on to the cockpit window, the windscreen, and I'm gonna use, basically you have to get really close, and then what I was using extra thin glue, and then was able to avoid any glue to end up basically on the windscreen, which is quite important. After that, we're gonna rescribe some of our panel lines who disappeared where you were removing all the gaps. So for this I use a razor blade saw, and then I have a rescribing tool that I'm using a little bit later on to remove all that. Of course, there will be now a little bit of a preparation. We're gonna add the tail fin, and of course a little bit later on we're gonna put the elevator, but there will be some adjustment to do on the tail, as you can see. It required basically a little bit of filling once again, and a little bit of sanding, and of course I'll have to remove the gaps with a little bit of putty. And then of course once we'll have work out on that tail, we'll be able to complete it. So while the putty is drying, we're gonna add the engine number 1 and 3, and then we're gonna let it cure for a little bit, and then we're gonna start putting some putty around basically the cockpit window. In the meantime, we're gonna be able to sand down all that part, and then we're gonna be able to fit our horizontal stabilizer. So we're now gonna remove all the gaps basically between the cockpit windows and the fuselage, and of course I had to put a little bit of protection behind the windscreen. We're also gonna add just a little bit. I have to say that the fitting was very good. As you could see, there was not a lot of parts who needed to have some putty on the junction between the wings and the fuselage. So I use some adhesive tape basically to protect my cockpit windows, and then of course remove them and remove all the extra putty once dried. The main thing after that is we're gonna do basically we're gonna do the mask for the cockpit window or the windscreen, and as you can see, it's gonna be quite a long process. So I've been using some very small adhesive tape, and then of course I will have to use a scalpel blade to be able to cut it at the correct dimension, and I have to say that it takes quite a while, but I couldn't find them on the aftermarket, so I did it by myself. It's a normal options that I'm normally considering. If you are on a budget, that's the way to do it. Otherwise you can invest, and but those basically you pay on average between 3 and 6 euro for some masking tape for those parts. So if you have the money, you can spend it. Otherwise, well, you have to do it yourself, but you're gonna spend much more time doing it. So now it's time to go to the paint booth. So initially I put a green layer around the cockpit, as that's gonna be the overall color on that aircraft. Then we're gonna move on to the anti-ice, which is on the leading edge of the wings, the stabilizer, and of course the engine lips or engine cowl anti-ice. So after that I realized that there were some more gaps, so on the nose, and those ones are quite obvious even if they are very small, so I had to remove them. And then of course I had to use some more masking tape to prepare to protect my my anti-ice parts. Of course after that we're gonna be able to go back to the paint booth, and we're gonna start painting basically the overall light gray color of the Rossya livery. So for this, it's a mix of glossy white and light gray, and the ratio is about 3/4 of white to 1/4 of light gray. But you'll have to adjust maybe after that, and then using the ball die basically to get the correct color. So once our model has been painted, we're gonna start moving on toward the undercarriage. So I'll be able to paint basically the tires initially, and for this I'm using basically a matte black color from Tamiya, and of course I'll do the nose wheel, the main, and then we're going to be able to work on the undercarriage. After some little paint touch-up, we're gonna fix basically the engine cowl and the fan disc on the number 1 and the number 3 engines. And after this, it's gonna be time to move on to other parts. We're gonna prepare basically the undercarriage. We'll put the nose strut, we'll glue it, but as you can see, this is those parts are quite small, so it'll require a little bit of curing time. Same for the nose landing gear. It's in a few parts, and of course there'll be a little bit of fiddling and then a bit of curing, and then we're gonna have to put it on the aircraft. And I had to say that it took a little bit of time to find the right position and to adjust it. That was a bit of a challenging part. Of course, nothing too difficult, but it required a little bit of fiddling, as you can see. So we'll now start painting the thrust reverser for the number 2 engines, and there'll be also a little bit of painting and paint touch-up basically on the exhaust of that number 2, and then we'll moving to the decaling. So initially I forgot to film the first part of the decaling, the left side, so anyway, you'll have the right side to catch up. Nothing too difficult. I used the standard box livery for Rossya airline, which is the government Russian airlines, and then of course we'll add all the well, I have to say that the decals were quite good quality. They were very easy to work with. A little bit of fiddling and adjustment, but that's mainly for the main Russian flag or Russian color around below basically the main 3 lines below the passenger windows. And I have to say that it gave me a little bit of work. I had to do a little bit of fiddling. As you can see, it's gonna take a little bit of time to have it aligned and correctly shaped. So sometimes when I have issues, I add water to be able to reposition the decals. But I have to say that they were drying quite fast, so I had to do a little bit of jiggling with the scalpel knife to unglue that and to be able to move it, but at the end the result were quite okay. So we're now going to start doing the weathering, and for this I use that old technique with water, a drop of hand soap and pastel, basically grated in the water, and all that together will give you that dark, that black color, and then you're gonna basically put a nice coat all over your aircraft, let it dry, and then you're gonna remove it with a humid cloth. I was using basically a makeup remover in cotton from my wife, and for this you just remove it. Just be careful that you will try to use the wind stream around the aircraft, and that will give you that speed effect as well, or those tracks basically that you will see mainly on those airliners. So you could also remove it, but you could put basically the vertical stripes below the passenger window. That sometimes happens as well when planes are not flying too long. So that's also another way, but for this I only did this way basically, and I use basically the current wind stream. And this is the final result of that Yak-40 from Zvezda on scale 144. I hope you enjoyed that model with me. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you soon for another model review and build review. Thank you for watching.